Guess who's back? Back again.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm John Williams. He's Jay Smith. And thank you for joining us here on Locked On Sooners. Nic Anderson is going to be back. Jackson Arnold, when meeting with the media on Monday night, dropped that he's really excited to have Nic Anderson back in the lineup on Saturday against Tennessee. So, Jay, I ask you, what does it mean for the Oklahoma Sooners offense to get a guy like Nic Anderson back into the fold?
Yeah, it changes everything, especially the dynamic about what the team is doing. Whenever you get a experienced wide receiver that can play, it opens up the playbook. Let's put it this way. We talked about this coming into the season, that the safety net for Jackson Arnold this year was going to be the fact that he had 4 veteran wide receivers who know the playbook, who's really good at spacing, that can go out there and, clean up some of the mistakes he'd make out there throwing the ball. That's just 4 returning from the team. Then you added a Deion Burks. Well, 4 of them have not played most of this season. We lost Farooq. We lost Jayden Gibson. We lost Andrew Anthony has been trying to come back, and Nic Anderson hasn't suited up yet. Well, now Nic is back, one of the guys that he was working with in the spring, one that he was chunking the ball deep to in spring games, right? In practice before spring games, in the spring practices and in summer workouts. He had him for the beginning of fall camp. Then he came out with a growing or a hamstring, some sort of injury. But this changes things up because, John, what I see out of this is Nic's going to give them the ability to actually have a wide receiver that has to be respected and space, right? Because he's really good at his route running and he's a burner, right? He can be a burner. Deion Burks is not the only dude anymore. So what does that look like for the other guys to you?
Well, for me, it pushes everybody down a notch. Guys like Brenan, Thompson, Hester, Zion Kearney, Zion Raggins, Jaquez Petaway, dudes that you were kind of forced to play a little bit. These guys are talented players. They're just maybe not ready quite yet. And that's okay. We talk about it all the time. The developmental trajectory for every player is just a little bit different. Remember, Nic Anderson pretty much sat his entire freshman year before having a breakout year last year, and really only got the breakout year because Andrew Anthony got hurt. He got forced into the lineup and then had a monster season. So it's not surprising when you see true freshman wide receivers out there struggling. Not every true freshman wide receiver is going to be Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State and ready to just break out as soon as he hits campus. That's just not the reality for every single wide receiver. And the same goes for a guy like Brenan Thompson. He's getting more playing time now than he, I think, ever has at the collegiate level. And so, you've got guys and Hester who are maybe being overextended a little bit more than what they're capable of right now, still developing and still, finding their way at the collegiate level. So you add a guy like Nic Anderson, who's had 798 yards and 10 touchdowns in a season, and that really opens things up. You talked about how it creates a lot of opportunities for a guy like Deion Burks, but I think it opens things up for a Brenan Thompson or Jaquez or Zion Raggins or Zion Kearney, in that they are not going to be the focal points of the offense. I mean, it's going to be Deion Burks. It's going to be Nic Anderson. Those are your focal points of the offense. And it's just going to create opportunities and create space for everybody else. You want to have guys on your field that suck attention to them.
Yeah.
Deion Burks is one of those dudes. Nic Anderson is another one. And that means that other guys are going to have opportunities because there's going to be less attention focused that way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that really changes the game of this, right? Is that Nic does draw attention. And so because of that, defenses have to scheme for his skill set on top of Deion Burks, right? Yeah, you have to respect them. They've been doing that for Deion Burks now, right? We've watched defenses do everything possible to have guys deep enough to be able to catch him on a deep route, right? They want to get themselves a couple of steps ahead so that he can't just go dust them. So that's why we haven't been able to go deep with him very often. Typically, whenever you see him, quote unquote, burn somebody, it's usually closer to the end zone because the end zone is so close, you don't have that much space, right? All he's doing is creating his own space. And so now with Nick, you can put them on the same side of the field, and spacing is going to be completely different. You can put them on opposite sides. The spacing for the defense has to be different. Now they have to recognize two guys. And like you said, the young guys, I think this is really going to be beneficial for like a Brenan Thompson. He's going to be able to go deep on a regular basis and just do a fly route. He can go with the deep post. He can do that deep cross again, because teams are going to have to respect the two guys outside of him, and he could be able to be the guy underneath, catch it, and just outrun everybody to the end zone. JJ Hester, being at his size at 6'4", he's going to have the opportunity to work and refine his route running. He's not going to have to be the one to do the spacing. He's just got to go to his side of the field and get open and make the catch, darn it. Just make the darn catch. That's all we ask for. But you add that too, and then you get the young guys that's going to get an opportunity to go in. Like you mentioned, a Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State, a Ryan Williams at Alabama. They're not the focal points at the wide receiver room. They're just really talented. And so because they're really talented, they can go out there and do their own thing. Teams still have to respect the other wide receivers out there. For us right now, because we're so young outside of Deion Burks, you didn't have to really respect a J.J. Hester. You don't have to respect a Brenan Thompson, because those guys haven't played a lot. They haven't shown you that, oh, I need to watch them in their routes. You can lollygag around them and hopefully they get open. And now Jackson Arnold is, and this is probably the biggest thing of them all, John. Jackson Arnold's getting somebody he trusts back. You can hear it in his voice in that interview when he was talking about it. He trusts Nic Anderson. And that, to me, is going to be huge, a huge confidence booster for him going forward.
Yeah, they had great chemistry last year. Even when Nic Anderson was a rotational receiver early in the season and Jackson was, playing those backup snaps, you could tell that they had a really nice chemistry that they developed in that, first offseason together. I don't think this fixes everything with the offense. So before people mistake what we're saying, that this is just going to put Oklahoma's offense on a elite trajectory, it may. They still got work to do with the offensive line. They still have work to do with the running back room. They've got to get a third option going, because if teams are able to take away Deion Burks, if Nic Anderson isn't fully ready to go this week and be up to speed, up to game speed, then you've got to find a third option. And Jackson Arnold has to continue to develop and continue to improve. So the return of Nic Anderson, it makes a significant difference, but there's still areas where Oklahoma's got to continue to get better, because he doesn't make all of the difference. Does that make sense? Like, he's not a guy that you're just putting out there and saying, all right, now we're good to go. No, we still have to figure out some offensive line health, some offensive line rotations. We got to continue to develop those guys up front. And we're going to talk about it coming up next, but the running back room has to continue to get better as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like offensive line is moving in the right direction. We'll probably talk about that tomorrow, because I think Brent Venables has his press conference tomorrow at 11 Central Time, 11:15 Central. And because of that, we should get some really good nuggets about what this line is going to look like. And then we'll get the first official SEC injury report, which is due on Wednesday morning. And then they can update it all the way through until Saturday. So Wednesday, we'll see all the probables and doubtfuls and everything. But closer to the game, we'll actually get to see who will most likely get a chance of playing. And to be honest, John, that's where I'm getting excited, because once we start actually hearing about who's ready to play, now we can really start to speculate. But I'll say, going into this game, of all games, I mentioned this, in the preseason, coming up on Tennessee, I'm happy we're seeing them now rather than later in the season. I'm more afraid of them later in the season than I am right now, because there's a lot of things that they haven't seen yet, and there's a lot of things about us that we're still putting together. If we can go out there with a majority healthy offensive line back like we were expecting to have, and then getting our main playmaker at wide receiver with our new playmaker, and be able to find a way to integrate them properly, John, I think we're going to be fine going forward. We just have to, not get, knock on wood, bit by the injury bug.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about this being Jackson Arnold's first start against an SEC team. Well, hey, it's Nico Iamaleava's first start against an SEC team, first true road start as well for him as a new starter at the collegiate level. So a lot to watch. We'll talk more about this game with Eric Kane of Locked On Vols later in the week. We'll also continue to dissect it and give you our takes on Tennessee as we move forward. But how can we fix the running back room? Who's going to step up? Who's going to take the lead? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Hey, Sooner fans, have you heard about ROY? It stands for Return on You, and it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. As you all know, NIL has changed the game for athletes. ROY changes the NIL game for fans. Here's why ROY is different. ROY gives you an opportunity to provide no-risk contributions. Fan contributions are securely held and are only distributed if the athlete makes the decision that aligns with the fan's support. If not, the money is returned to the fan. Engage with athletes on their NIL journey. By using ROY, fans not only support athletes financially, but also become part of their name, image, and likeness journey, helping them succeed both on and off the field. Download ROY for iOS or Android and enter referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get the ROY app for iOS or Android and start making an impact on your favorite team. Use referral code Locked On for an opportunity to win $5,000 cash. Visit roy.com for more details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROY. So much like last year, Jay, we have a running back situation that is just unsettled. If we were driving a cruise liner through the ocean, we are in choppy waters. We've not yet hit smooth seas. So what do we make of Oklahoma's running back situation now that we're 3 weeks into the season?
Yeah, we need somebody to go ahead and jump out and be that number one, right? So I know a lot of people are asking for more Taylor Tatum. I want him to play as well.
Yeah.
The only problem you run into with Tatum is that whenever he's in the game, you know he's going to run the ball, right?
Yep.
Right? Or he's going to go out for passing because he hasn't been the best in run blocking yet. It's something that needs to be learned, especially when you're doing certain gap schemes, right? You're scheming up ways to help the offensive line, and that hinders a young running back who has to figure out ways to help with that, right? They got to know where to be at. They got to know how to block. Views, check where their guy is, and then release quickly to where they can be an option for the quarterback. We haven't got to that point yet. Then you have Javonte Barnes, who he's been taking some time. It takes a while for him to release from the backfield whenever he's looking for the blitz or looking for the dude that he's supposed to block. He's got to get better at that. Salchuk has been very hesitant about hitting the hole before he ends up, getting tackled for a 1 yard gain or a 2 yard gain. It's not going to be sufficient. We need to get more to 4 and 5, more to 7 yard gains on a regular basis, or we need to break out and go a 66-yard touchdown like he used to do on a regular basis, right? We need stuff like that. And so for us, the big thing is we got to figure out who the wide receiver is that's going to take this by the horns, take the reins of this, and actually be the dude that owns it. I don't know who that's going to be, John, though. That's the big question. But I'll say this. Getting back Nic Anderson, like we talked about in the first segment, could really help the running back room a lot more than people understand.
Yeah, if teams are having to focus more on the wide receiver position because you have Deion Burks and Nic Anderson, it might open up a little bit more run lanes for the Oklahoma Sooners running backs. But, to your point, I think we just haven't found anything consistent, both in the blocking scheme, but also the running backs. They've not been consistent, whether it's in pass pro, run blocking, or just doing the basic running back thing, carry the football. Javonte Barnes has been good at times, but at times he's run straight into the back of his blockers. Gavin Sawchuk, just again, you mentioned it. He seems hesitant when he's running, just getting downhill quick. He may not be picking up a lot of yards, but he's at least picking up positive yards. Taylor Tatum, I think we've seen some really good things. I just don't know if we've seen enough to warrant thrusting him into the RB1 role just yet. I think some of this gets fixed if guys like Branson Hickman are back, or if you get Troy Everett back, this week. I think that does help because you get a lot more experience at both guard and center, and that's going to make the offensive line better. but still the running backs have to run with a little bit better vision. They got to run with a little bit better, contact balance and not go down on first contact. But I'm just hoping that it's not, the middle of the season like it was last year, where we are still trying to figure out who's the number one running back. Because I remember the debates all last year. Give me more Tawi Walker. Give me more Javonte Barnes. Marcus Major's looking really, really good early in the season. Gavin Sawchuk's now back in the fold. We don't know, and nobody really knows who's going to be a lead back one week or the next. But I think we got to figure out a little bit of a hierarchy here. And if it was me that was deciding how I was going to play these guys, I mean, Javonte Barnes would be getting my first snaps. I know they love Sawchuk's leadership. I know that he's a really good pass blocker. He's done good in pass pro. That helps. That matters. At the same time, I need my running back to be able to turn out some dirty yards, get 3-4 yards a pop. And Javonte Barnes has been doing that. And then give me more Taylor Tatum. And if it's just in a pass catching role, or he's going to, if it's pretty obvious what he's going to do, it doesn't matter. The guy's so talented. Just get him the ball in space and let him run.
No, I totally agree. And with that, I'm wondering, and if anything, I'm kind of curious to see why we haven't seen really Sawchuk and Tatum in the two-back set, right? That probably will be a very intriguing setup. We've been seeing Barnes with Tatum together. I'm curious to why we haven't seen Sawchuk with them, because I feel like that could even open up the run, right? That could probably even open up to where people will be keying in on Tatum. You can hand the ball to Sawchuk. He may be able to find a hole that he couldn't find before. Or you can get Sawchuk as his quote-unquote lead blocker. Just, he can, run by the edge and, just graze him, knock him off of his spot, and then let Tatum run right up the middle and pick up some yards. We're just going to have to get super creative with the running back room for right now until somebody decides to say they're the number one back. I thought Sam Franklin would have done a little bit more than what he's done. We haven't seen much of him for the most part. It's just, unfortunately, it's a running back by committee again for DeMarco Murray. And I guess he's trying to see who can he trust. And right now, he hasn't seen anybody that's really trustworthy.
Yeah, and I think some of this comes from his experience in the NFL when he just kind of got ran into the dirt a little bit and how much that kind of took off of his career. But at the same time, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's just not a lot of trust from snap to snap down, and there's just no consistency right now. And again, maybe the offensive line health fixes some of this. Maybe just continuing to play these guys and further developing them will help that. But you got to get more than what we're getting out of the running back room right now. They've been solid. Thankfully, they're not putting the ball on the ground. They're protecting the football. Even if they're not getting good yardage, they're doing like the base level stuff. And that's a good thing, because it'd be worse if they were not getting a lot of yardage, but they were also fumbling the ball. They're at least getting you some dirty yards. And this last game, it was better than it was the week before. So maybe some, encouraging signs out of the running back group, but still we need more, right? It's Kylo Ren. I need more. I need more out of him. But thankfully also Jackson Arnold is looking really, really good in the run game, especially the read option game, because as he gets better at that and teams are having to actually pay attention to him and respect his running ability, that might even open up some things for Gavin Sawchuk, for Javonte Barnes at the mesh point when he's he's got the ball in the belly and they're trying to decide who it's going to be. Well, they can't just jump on the running back now, because Jackson Arnold might scoot for 40 yards in a blink of an eye. Yeah,
I agree. That's where you have to respect him, and that's where he helps that run game. Just like you said, you can't just put it this way. He's going to run the ball now. At this point, the competition for the next two games from Tennessee and Auburn, they're going to look at this and say, yeah, Jackson Arnold's going to run, right? I mean, ESPN even pointed out he was the number one dual threat quarterback in his class. He's going to run the ball. And at this point, you kind of need him to, right? Like, I know a lot of fans are a little concerned about him running it, and he always runs right into people. I do need him to do a better job of, sliding or avoiding getting big hits. But him running the ball, yeah, give me more. Inject that into my veins. We need him to do a lot more of that, just to create that to where teams have to, because that extra blocker, him just being running by himself, that's tough for teams, right? Because they're not always going to have a free guy running right at him whenever he can find a way to fake him out. And the good thing is that if they decide to go after him and he hands the ball off, the running back should be able to break and be gone. And yeah, that's what we're looking for. We need some home run runs. We get a home run, hit run coming soon. All the complaints about the offense goes away. But at the same time, we'll get why weren't we doing that before? As if, everything is just that simple.
Yeah, we just need some more consistency. Pop a big run here and there. That definitely will certainly help. I think, again, they're heading in the right direction, but they got the biggest test of the season this week against Tennessee when the Vols come to town. Got some big recruiting updates coming up. Cortez Mills, Floyd Buard, we'll discuss at Locked On Sooners.
You heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. The best part about that is then with that YouTube TV based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And that's given to you from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So you gotta check it out. Like right now, we see that Oklahoma is sitting here still, at about a -7.5. Looks like Tennessee is still getting all the traffic, and the line is really not moving much, which tells me that we should keep our eyes on that, which we will. So go visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook.
All of our recruiting segments here on the Locked On Network are brought to you by LinkedIn. Go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Do you want to start good news or bad news there, Jay?
Give me both.
Give me both.
No, kidding. Give me the good news. Let's talk good news first.
All right, good news here. So Cortez Mills was at Nebraska this past weekend.
Yeah.
Was it last weekend or?
It was the Colorado game. It was 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago, was there with one Isaiah Mose, formerly of, or not formerly, but anyway, Lee Summit North.
Kansas City. Yeah, Lee Summit North in Kansas City.
All the Lee Summit North drama. Anyway, Cortez Mills was at Nebraska. There's a lot of concern that the 4-star wide receiver was potentially off the board now for Oklahoma, given Brent Venables' policy and regulation, whatever you want to call it, on committed prospects going on official visits. Well, he posted on social media, locked in with a picture from his visit with Oklahoma. So all things look to be good to go with Cortez Mills.
That's what it appears like, right? The 6'1" wide receiver, man. He's one of the top 100 players in the country, right? I think that's like 114 nationally. Rivals has him as 81st in the country. So he's beloved by the recruiting site. Heck, if I'm correct, 247 has him at number 98. And yeah, with the Brent Venables policy, it's not that they pull the scholarship away. It's more so they don't consider you committed and they begin to recruit around you, right? It's look, if you're going to commit because you are done with all your visits. You don't need to take others. And Mills decided to, test things out. And he said he wanted to do extra visits whenever he committed. He wanted to go a couple of places. He ended up at Nebraska, which was kind of shocking to me. And when he tweeted that out today, I was like, oh, okay. So he is locked in. He's good. Well, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to argue or even fight back. So it's a good thing for the Sooners that we got that locked up. I'm hoping that that's how it ends. He's a wide receiver that's needed, and especially with all of the injury situation we're dealing with at wide receiver, it's going to be good to be able to refill that room up with a lot of young talent that we can start getting some reps so that they can start preparing themselves over the next couple of years. So I'm satisfied. I mean, it's either or. I mean, I think Oklahoma has a few targets they're going to go after still just because of the whole scenario, and we'll see how it goes. But in the end, I do expect Cortez to end up signing up with the Sooners.
Yeah, to me, this feels kind of final at this point. I think it was very much up in the air, especially when he did go and visit Nebraska, and Nebraska had a great game against Colorado. I think it would not have been shocking to see him decide to flip his commitment to the Cornhuskers, go play with Dylan Raiola. I mean, that's going to be a really hot name that a lot of wide receivers are going to want to play with because he's junior Patrick Mahomes. But the fact that he posted that out on social media, didn't have to. It was not
Mm-mm.
necessary. He was still technically committed to Oklahoma, but to put that out there to ease everybody's concerns and the fan base with the staff, and who knows, maybe the staff had never had any concerns because they had conversations about it beforehand. We don't know the conversations that went down between Cortez and Emmett Jones and Brent Venables and all that. It's not the first time that a player has asked to go on a visit with Venables. It's just the first one that did that and then also stayed committed. So it's going to be fascinating. So the one that didn't stay committed, Floyd Buard, a Rivals 4-star defensive tackle out of Miami by way of Canada. He was with the Hurricanes this past weekend, and he decommitted from the Oklahoma Sooners on Monday night.
Yeah, and rumor has it with a lot of the Miami people saying that he never showed up to the visit, but he was supposed to.
Okay.
So there's a lot of conflicting stories behind it, and so I'm not even sure which one it is. But he did decommit. He did decide that he's going to open up his recruiting again. I mean, there's a chance that Oklahoma could, go back on the pursuit with them, or Oklahoma could start looking at some other players. I've heard rumors about some other top defensive tackles that have a relationship with Todd Bates that has had some consideration with Oklahoma. But I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to actually go down. But I'll say this. I was really excited about the Floyd Buard piece. He's very athletic for his size. He's not a little dude, right? He comes in at almost 6'3", 315 as a senior. And again, being from, Canada, playing football for 2-3 years, extremely raw talent. He's one of those that you can bring in, adding him with a Trent Wilson as well as a Kamari Moore. They could do some damage, but in the way that this is looking right now, he's probably. I'm wondering what is enticing him. Is it someone has a nicer NIL package? Because if anything, the Miami piece was one that I thought was definitely a problem because he's at Miami Central. That's technically considered a feeder school for the Canes, but overall, he decided not to make the visit, possibly, and he wanted to come to Oklahoma because of Bates and the staff. He came on to my channel and actually did an interview and told us about the family environment and everything, and that's why he picked Oklahoma, everybody else. So now I'm just like, okay, was he feeding me wolf tickets, or what was this? What changed his mind, or did him and the staff decide that they need to let him go ahead and just do some shopping around? But I think it's a big loss because I thought it was a very good piece, especially in the raw talent side, because you never know what he's going to turn out to be. But now Bates and him's got to get back to work and find themselves another 315-pounder to come in next season.
Well, and who knows, you see what Jayden Jackson's doing as a true freshman, and you're like, oh, well, that dude's going to be starting at nose tackle for the next 3 years, at least, maybe 4, including this year. So maybe my path to playing time is not so clear as the nose tackle. And you got a Kamari Moore, who I'm sorry, that dude is much better than a 3-star it gets credit for. So maybe I can't say this, I can't speak to this, but the fact that Jayden Jackson is starting already for the Oklahoma Sooners, I think the writing there is on the wall that if you're a nose tackle that's coming up, just know that you're likely going to be sitting behind Jayden Jackson for 2025, 2026. And if he decides to stay for his senior season, 2027. So you're looking pretty far out there right now. If you're a nose tackle looking to play significant snaps or even start for the Oklahoma Sooners, that seems to be pretty well locked down for the foreseeable future. So there's a whole lot of reasons why a guy like Floyd Buard could decide to explore other options. He does have a really nice offer sheet. I mean, Alabama's on it, Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Miami, Penn
all
State,
the big schools,
Missouri, Ole Miss. He's got a really, really nice offer sheet. Who knows exactly where it's all going to end up? It's going to be a really fascinating recruitment to continue to watch, but it's not going to be Oklahoma at this point. I'm fairly certain. So we'll see if they decide to go another direction. The defensive line still looks really, really nice with Kamari Moore, with Trent Wilson, Alexander Shield Knight, and CJ Nixon. I think you've still got a really, really nice foursome there with that group. But yeah, and again, it's still a really, really nice recruiting class despite the loss of Buard moving forward. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. We are just like under 50 subscribers from 8,000. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And thank you to all of you who make Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. Find Locked On College Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all the social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer.
Sooner.